Hi, this is Derek. I'm actually on campus at NCKU in Thailand. This is where I got my master's in literature and used to practice Kung Fu a long time ago. I wanted to make a video talking about keywords and choosing the right title. I have an email about it. I think if you have my indie author survival guide, there's a big article in there talking about it, but something interesting came up yesterday, which concerns an email I sent out using the metaphor of a dildo as a bad representation of choosing a book title that's more shocking and obscene than it is clear and clever. So I'm going to talk about why I sent that email, some of the responses I've got, and also some of the tools I use to help choose the right titles for my book. Okay, so I'm here on campus. Let me tell you real quick the background. Someone on YouTube commented a little while ago about why your book should not fit in or stand out. I always tell people that's the number one mistake people make with their book covers, is that they want to fit in and not stand out. And most first-time authors are against this idea, just like I was, because I always assumed I wanted a book that gets attention, that stands out. There's millions of other books out there. How do you choose a title or a cover or whatever that gets people to listen and lean in and pay attention? So I understand the reluctance against my advice, but my response was something like, you don't want to be a dildo in a cereal aisle, because I was being kind of snarky on YouTube, which I don't like to be but when I get negative comments, but sometimes it works out, because this idea of a dildo in a cereal aisle, I think it's really poignant in a way, in that if I used any other comparison or metaphor, it wouldn't be as challenging. So part of the reason to choose that metaphor is that it does get stuck in people's heads. It does make them pay attention. There can be a reason to use something that's a little bit obscene, depending on your audience, but there's always also a cost. So I was sending out an email yesterday and I decided to use this metaphor. I'd already written the email, I was about to hit send, and then I came up with kind of a funny joke as a PS at the end of the email. And I always send out my emails when I'm sleep exhausted and tired and on a deadline, so I had to get it done. But I was a little worried that I'd gone too far, I would upset people, which I don't like to do. So I also posted it on Facebook just to get some feedback, and that's when it got kind of interesting, because yes, on the one hand, some people did find it offensive, distasteful, or at least uncomfortable, and I don't want to make people uncomfortable. A lot of other people thought it was funny and encouraged it. So whenever you have controversial content, the trick is to figure out if it's controversial, if you're pushing anyone's buttons. The danger is that you'll alienate some people. The value is that you'll pull some people in. Because if I just stuck with simple, obvious, easy stuff, on the one hand, it could be boring and people aren't listening anyway, they're not opening my emails anyway. So if you want them to open your emails, sometimes you have to risk trying to be funny, but it can also backfire and you can lose a lot of your list. I'm sure I'll lose thousands of people off my email list, even though after getting feedback on Facebook, I'll tell you the joke. Basically, I said in the email content and in the header somewhere, I said, you shouldn't want your book to be a dildo in the cereal aisle. And then down at the bottom in the PS, I had said originally, I hope this doesn't offend you. If it does, you can unsubscribe below, but I hate to have a dildo be the thing that comes between us, which is kind of the punchline, which is sort of funny to some people, but also obnoxious or uncomfortable to other people. And so you're always going to take a risk when you put objectionable or offensive content in alienating some people. I have a really big list of about 80,000 people, and they're not all tight, close fans who know me or my sense of humor. If people like me enough, if they know me enough, they'll probably ignore one obscene email or accidental email, knowing that I put out a lot of good content. But for much of the list, they've probably been on there for a while. They might have opened a few emails and found content. Maybe they don't unsubscribe, but they're not really listening or paying attention either. So by sending out an email like this, what's going to happen is your core audience who likes you and gets you, they're going to lean in and pay attention because you did something risky. And everybody who kind of was just hanging on but isn't really that engaged anyway, they're going to choose to opt out. And part of me hates to see them go. Part of me hates to rock the boat or do anything to upset people. And in like a bigger business, if I was, well, I would say something like if I was Coca-Cola, if I was $1 billion business, then you want to be inclusive and not, appeal to one side of your audience over the other. Except that, for example, this year in 2020 in the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of billion-dollar companies did have to make a choice because being silent on the issue was also a choice, and they had to pick a side. So in my content, that's obviously not happening. This was just a one-off joke, which I didn't need to tell. I could have found other ways to avoid it, and I did end up softening the joke. I took out the PS completely, and so I still have the metaphor of the dildo in there, but it almost loses its teeth or its bite. It's almost like, it's sort of interesting, but it doesn't have that powerful punch from the PS, which was the actual funny part. So it's almost like I keep the controversy or the obscene part without getting to the best content part, at least best content for my audience. Like I said, some people will be offended. The value of scaring some people off, especially if you have a big list. I have 80,000 people on my list that I pay for to maintain that list, and those are people who've already gone through all my email funnels. It's unlikely that they'll buy something from me, at least until I have a new course out whenever. So the temptation would be just to, not rock the boat at all and just keep putting out good, clear content. The best practice with the email header is usually just to describe what's inside, what's the benefit in the email, what are they actually going to get. But if people have been following you for a while, they've probably seen a million of those and they're already kind of tuning you out. Anyway, so that's kind of where we are. I posted on Facebook. I decided to modify the original email that I sent out, but I kept that joke in the punchline in the Facebook post. And some people thought it was funny enough to share. They actually shared it in one of a pretty big self-publishing group that I'm a fan of, which was nice and unexpected. So I got a little bit extra visibility for that email, which is almost good for branding on a personal level, but possibly not on a business level. I haven't checked the stats yet. It's probable that a lot more people unsubscribed, but I also think it's probable that a lot more people noticed the email and opened it and read it, which ultimately is the point of the email. I'm actually teaming up with Joe Bunting tonight to do a webinar about how to choose your book title. So partly in that email, I encourage people to go sign up for the webinar. You could still do that depending on when you're watching this, although it's only tonight and there won't be a replay. But I also put a link down to KDP Rocket, or Kindle Publisher Rocket, the new name, with Dave Chesson. I'm an affiliate. I've been promoting that for a long time. I actually just found out my affiliate links have been wrong for like 6 months. So I'm trying to put those links. I don't usually recommend a lot of affiliate stuff, but that's one product I think every self-publishing author should have. So I'm pretty comfortable adding that into my email funnels and just giving it kind of an exclusive email to recommend that product, because I for years have been trying really hard to sell my own stuff, and it would be easier just to recommend products that I like and focus on my own writing, which is where my passion really is. What does this mean for your book and your book title? There's a couple ways to think of it. I think in my email I sent out today, there were 3 things. Number one, you need the keywords to be found. When people are searching for things, you've got to use the right keywords that people are searching for so they find you and they know what your book is, who it's for, what the value is, what are the benefits. You got to be really clear with all that stuff. And the title is part of that. You also need it for, if you're doing advertising, you need a big keyword list. You also need to choose the right category so keywords can be helpful. So a tool like Publisher Rocket can help with all the research and give you suggestions. And when I talk about book titles, I've also said for years, especially with nonfiction, there are kind of 2 different kinds. There's the one that's the brand book, that's the clever mashup of words that creates a unique title, which could be a movement or a brand or like you invented something new, which can be powerful if you already have an audience. But if you don't have an audience, those books are really hard to sell because nobody knows what those words mean. If the content isn't obvious from the title or the cover, especially if you're trying to do something clever and new that doesn't fit into your category, it's hard to get traction because you don't ever have the opportunity to explain to potential readers what your book title actually means. So I would caution you to go on the side of being more clear with your title, which I haven't always done. I often make this mistake. I definitely did for the first few years of publishing, where I would try to do something really cool and clever that was controversial and got maybe shares because, it definitely stands out. It shocks people, but the conversion was really low because people thought it was funny, but they didn't necessarily want to buy it because they didn't think it would be helpful. In the book I'm working on now, it's called Bookcraft. I'm not happy with that title still, but it's the best that I could find that was different and unique. I like parts of it. The idea behind Bookcraft is that we focus on the craft of writing, not the art of writing, and I talk about why those are different. I talk a little bit about how writing is like magic, so it's a little bit like learning the craft of magic. There are some witches who just can do magic spontaneously, and it's more like Wordsworth's spontaneous overflow of powerful overflow of spontaneous feeling. I think that's the right Wordsworth quote. And that can be better writing. If you tap into that magic, it can be better writing, but it's unpredictable and it's harder to tame. Whereas if you learn the craft, which is like the ritual or the habit, to grow your process and to grow your confidence so that you can write on demand instead of waiting for inspiration, that's kind of the main metaphor that I'm going to be using in the book. So that's the angle. This is all just content about how to write a good book. So we could have taken a lot of different angles. Once I have the right title, I can tweak my introduction and the conclusion to pull out the ruling metaphor that goes along with the book title to make sure that it all makes sense. But I could have gone in several different directions with that book title. And I could have done something, I want to say, my instinct is to say dumb, like how to write a book or how to write a good book, which I think was my original, how to write good books. I don't know, something that's like so obviously dumb and superficial and simple, but is also really clear and could have converted better. You also want to be thinking about when people are saying it out loud. If you have a book that people don't feel comfortable saying out loud or they can't pronounce, or it's a little bit hard to say, you want to think about if people are in conversation and they want to casually say, hey, did you read this book? It's called, Bookcraft or whatever. Have you read Bookcraft yet? You want to make sure it flows in the conversation. If it's something really long or weird, people may feel uncomfortable recommending it. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. Anyway, it was a good kind of teachable moment. I may go back. I was thinking about using that Dildo email in my autoresponder series, but I don't like it. It's a better as a breakup email after they've gone through all your funnels. Before you put them on your main list, it would be a good idea to screen out people who are not your audience, people who don't get you or your personality, and to pull in people who are like you, who will appreciate you and your jokes and your risks a little bit more. It's hard to please everybody, and I don't think you should be necessarily combative. I have some other people with big platforms who are combative, which can work in their favor because they have raving fans. When you're combative, when you take stands on issues, you'll pull in the people who agree with you, and they will support you with more ardor, which can be great. I am kind of a polite, nice guy. I build my email lists really quickly, but I don't actually convert that well. It would be better to have core fans who are really passionate about your brand than to have just 100,000 fans who are kind of lukewarm, or they don't really appreciate your personality. They might like your content, your useful content, but they don't really appreciate you as a person. Anyway, so it's always risky. You're somewhere on that line of staying safe or potentially doing something a little more authentic, a little more vulnerable, every once in a while to pull people in closer to your inner circle. You might want to do that after your automated email series, like after they've then you might want to do something a little riskier to shove some of those people out of your audience who maybe don't really belong there. Anyway, maybe this video helps. Let me know in the comments what you think about the issue. If you want to ask me about a book title or a book idea, you can do that in the comments. Also, thanks, bye-bye.